You know, have you ever just stopped and thought about why you feel something is instinctively right or wrong? It's this fundamental thing, isn't it? This moral compass we seem to have.
Absolutely. But where does it actually come from? Is it something we're born with, hardwired?
Or is it learned? Imposed by, society or culture?
It's a huge question,
Yeah.
and it's one thinkers have wrestled with for, well, millennia. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the whole fascinating history of ethical thought.
Yeah, we're tracing it right from like the earliest human groups up to the really complex stuff we face today.
And our guide for this journey is A Companion to Ethics. It's this great collection of articles. You've got philosophers, anthropologists, theologians.
A real mix of perspectives.
Exactly. And our mission really is to pull out the key insights, the surprising bits, the ideas that have shaped how people think about the good life across time and culture.
We want to give you a kind of shortcut to understanding all these different lenses people use to view ethics.
So let's start way back. Early human societies, small nomadic groups. How did morality even begin there? Was it just, chaos?
That war of all against all idea that Hobbes talked about.
Right. But the anthropological evidence, especially looking at groups like, say, the Bushmen of the Kalahari, even today, it paints a different picture.
Okay, how so?
Well, it helps us see which values might be pretty universal and which ones vary wildly. And it challenges the Hobbesian view.
Because life itself, even just biologically, depends so much on cooperation, right? Not just conflict.
Precisely. You see it everywhere.
Yeah.
Animals show social traits, caring for young, grooming, kindness, defending the weak. They're not just crude, exclusive egoists.
And that brings us to Darwin, interestingly enough.
Yes. It's often overlooked, but Darwin had a really insightful take on this. He basically said, any animal with strong social instincts would inevitably develop a moral sense, a conscience, once its intellect developed.
Like humans.
Like humans. And he thought this naturally leads to something like the golden rule, do unto others.
So morality bubbles up from within, from our social nature, not just from rules handed down.
That's the implication. It emerges from these innate dispositions. Think about kin bias, favoring your family, or reciprocity, I help you, you help me. We see that in animals too.
Starts narrow, maybe just family.
Right. But then human intelligence, institutions, culture, they work to widen that circle of concern. You start recognizing duties beyond your immediate kin.
Which brings us to that case study you mentioned, the Gui Bushmen. What's their system like?
They're fascinating. Hunter-gatherers, very egalitarian. Economic exchange for them is about reducing inequality, not gaining personal wealth.
Harmony is the goal.
Harmony is absolutely central. It's often the ultimate rationale for action. Even their theology reflects this. Taking more than you need is seen as an affront to their creator god, Enedima.
Okay, harmony sounds great, but what happens when things go wrong? People do clash.
They do. And their conflict resolution is really interesting. In such a small, tight-knit group, they avoid direct condemnation. The source mentions something called wrong-footed treatment. It's like a subtle, community-wide conspiracy to make someone feel out of sync, uncomfortable.
Sort of pushing them out without a big confrontation.
Exactly. To induce them to leave the band, or even in really serious cases like murder, they might redefine it as an accident, even if the evidence says otherwise.
Wow. So maintaining the relationship, the social fabric, is more important than, say, objective truth or punishment in that context.
It seems so. For them, morality is fundamentally about the health of relationships and the state of the community. It's incredibly contextual.
Okay, so from these small bands, let's jump forward. Humans settle down, communities grow, writing develops, ancient Near East. Ethics becomes more explicit.
Yes, you start seeing value concepts clearly laid out in things like commercial documents, law codes.
Like Hammurabi's code.
That's a famous one. And hero stories, too. Often you had this union of church and state, kings ruling as divine representatives.
And Hammurabi's eye for an eye, the lex talionis that wasn't quite equal justice for all, was it?
No, not at all. That principle applied mainly between aristocrats. If you injured a freeman or a slave, it was usually fines.
And if a slave was hurt, the fine went to the master.
Right. It clearly shows a class-based system. Slaves were property.
Then there's the Gilgamesh story. Starts out as this brutal tyrant.
Totally ignores human rights.
But then his friend Enkidu dies, and he's confronted with his own mortality.
Goes on that quest for immortality.
Right, and along the way, he rejects simple pleasure-seeking, and eventually he even gives up the quest for eternal life itself.
What's the ethical takeaway there?
It seems to be that an ethic based purely on power, or ignoring others' rights, or even just heroic quests, ultimately fails, even for a king who's part god. Neither power nor pleasure alone cuts it.
Okay, shifting to ancient Egypt, we hear about Ma'at. What was that?
Ma'at was central. It's this really rich concept: justice, balance, order, truth, all rolled into one. It was seen as the divine order established by the gods, and the pharaoh's job was to uphold it.
So maintaining cosmic harmony, almost?
Yeah.
Very much so. It was about keeping things right, in balance, across society and the cosmos.
And then the Hebrew scriptures. Kingship there is also divinely ordained. But they grapple with that big problem, theodicy.
Yeah, the question of evil. If God is good and are powerful, why does evil exist? Why do the righteous suffer?
How did they deal with that?
There was a shift, particularly clear in the book of Daniel, towards individual righteousness and, importantly, rewards in the afterlife. Justice might not happen perfectly here, but it will happen eventually.
And is there one core ethical idea that really stands out in the Hebrew Bible?
I'd say imitatio Dei, the imitation of God. But it's crucial how they understood it.
How so?
It wasn't about becoming like God through contemplation, like Plato might say, or later Christian ideas. It was about acting like God through practical moral action.
So love thy neighbor as thyself.
Exactly. That command comes because humans are made in God's image.
Yeah.
So you imitate God's kindness and justice in your actions towards others. It grounds morality in divine action, demanding practical compassion.
Okay, let's switch gears and head east. India. Huge, complex traditions. Where do we start? Maybe dharma and karma?
Definitely. Dharma is this massive concept: moral order, social duty, the right way of living, the law that sustains reality. It's like the form of life.
And karma?
That's the principle of action and consequence. Your actions shape your future, your position in the cycle of rebirth. Good actions lead to good results, bad actions to bad results. Simple in principle, complex in application.
Then the Bhagavad Gita offers something unique: nishkama karma. Disinterested action. What does that really mean?
It's performing your duties, your dharma, but completely detached from the results.
Yeah.
You don't act for the reward or worry about the outcome.
So the goal isn't the outcome, but the detachment itself.
Precisely. The goal is freedom from being bound by your actions and their consequences. You act rightly, but relinquish the attachment to being the doer or the enjoyer of the fruits.
Interesting. Now, the Jainas take ahimsa, non-injury, to an extreme level.
They really do. It's fundamental for them. An uncompromising reverence for all life. Strict vegetarianism is just the start. Rules against harming even insects, accidentally or otherwise.
And you mentioned something surprising about the justification. It's not purely altruistic.
Well, that's the nuance. While it looks like pure concern for others, the underlying justification is often about the practitioner's own spiritual progress. Harming others generates negative karma, harming oneself. So avoiding harm to others is also crucial self-purification.
That is a different way of thinking about it: compassion as self-interest in a spiritual sense.
It shows how different the frameworks can be. And speaking of ahimsa, we have to mention Gandhi.
Right. He blended tradition and radicalism, his satyagraha, truth force.
It wasn't passive resistance. It was active, firm adherence to truth, to a just cause for the good of society, not just yourself. And he famously applied ahimsa to political action.
And his views evolved, like on vegetarianism.
Yes, he moves from just following custom to a deeper ethical reasoning based on consideration for animals themselves, always refining.
Let's move to Buddhism. The Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, described as a rebel and philosopher. What drove him?
He was deeply disturbed by suffering dukkha and by the rigid social structures like the caste system. He sought a path away from suffering towards happiness.
Towards nibbana.
Nibbana is the ultimate goal, yes, for the monastic path, total liberation. But he also taught a path to a qualified, worldly happiness for lay people. Importantly, he rejected pure hedonism, seeing it as ultimately unsatisfying.
Is Buddhist ethics mostly individualistic, about escaping suffering?
Not entirely. It's definitely consequentialist, focused on well-being, but it has a strong altruistic side too, with virtues like loving kindness and compassion.
And it emphasizes duties over rights.
Yes, very much reciprocal duties. Parents and children, teachers and students.
Yeah.
Less about abstract rights or guilt in the Western sense. Wrongdoing is seen as harmful to oneself, stemming from negative states like hatred or greed.
And he rejected the caste system.
Fundamentally, he taught that character, not birth, is what matters. People were admitted to the monastic order, regardless of their social background. That was radical for its time.
Okay, a quick glance at classical China now. Very diverse views there, too. Confucianism.
Confucianism is big on internalizing social roles, knowing your place, and cultivating virtues by following exemplary models. Harmony through ordered social structure and personal character.
But Mohism, Mosey, challenged that focus on tradition.
Big time. Mosey argued that the standard for morality should be utility, what actually benefits people. He said traditions can be terrible.
He used that example of the tribe eating their firstborn sons.
Exactly. Just because it's tradition doesn't make it right. Utility, general welfare, that's the measure for Mosey.
And Taoism, Laozi and Zhuangzi.
More skeptical.
Much more skeptical about fixed rules and language. Laozi kind of advocated a return to a simpler, more natural state, like a primitive village, before culture complicates things.
And Zhuangzi emphasized flexibility, tolerance, recognizing the limits of our knowledge. He suggested being open to different perspectives, realizing that our ways of defining good are limited and maybe even counterproductive. Go with the flow almost.
Wow. It's incredible how varied these Eastern approaches are. From duty and detachment in India, compassion in Buddhism, to social harmony or utility or naturalness in China.
They all grapple with that core question of the good life, just from profoundly different angles.
Okay, let's pivot now to the Western philosophical tradition, back to ancient Greece.
And back to Socrates, really. His fundamental question. How should one live to achieve eudaimonia?
Which isn't just happiness in the modern sense, right? It's more like flourishing, living well, successfully as a human being.
Exactly. And for Plato and Aristotle, who followed him, the focus was on our exite virtue, or excellence.
And virtue depended on understanding human nature first.
Yes. What is human excellence? What virtues allow a human to flourish, given what a human is? It wasn't about an abstract morality quite yet, but about the excellent human life.
Moving forward to the medieval period, we get concepts like conscience, Aquinas' synderesis, and conscientia.
Right. Synderesis is that innate spark. The basic ability to grasp that good is different from evil. Conscientia is applying that knowledge to specific situations, figuring out the right action here and now.
Based on that principle, good is to be done and pursued, and evil avoided.
That's the bedrock for Aquinas. And then you have the whole tradition of natural law.
Which had different interpretations, God's direct rules or the inherent rational order of things.
Exactly, that debate. Is it divine command, or is it discoverable through reason because it's built into the structure of reality?
And Occam took the divine command idea to a radical extreme.
He did. He argued that since God is omnipotent, he could logically command anything. He could make theft permissible if he chose to. It highlights the tension: is morality arbitrary divine will, or grounded in reason nature?
That really sets the stage for modern philosophy, doesn't it? This shift towards seeing morality as arising from within us, from human nature or reason, autonomy.
A huge shift. And David Hume was central to that. He argued morality is rooted in our feelings.
Not reason.
Reason helps us figure things out, but it doesn't move us to act, Hume said. Our feelings of approval or disapproval, that's what motivates moral action. Moral judgments are based on sentiment.
But then Kant swings back hard towards reason.
Completely. Kant insists morality must be grounded in reason and duty, not fickle emotions. His categorical imperative demands universalizability.
Act only on principles you could rationally want everyone to follow.
That's the core. And he distinguishes between perfect duties, things you must always or never do, like don't lie, don't coerce.
Absolute prohibition.
Right. And imperfect duties, things you must do sometimes, but you have leeway on how and when, like helping others or developing your talents. You have the duty, but not in every single instance immediately.
Okay, so Kant is duty and reason. Then you get utilitarianism, Bentham, Mill, focusing purely on consequences.
Right. The basic idea is always do whatever produces the best consequences, usually defined as maximizing happiness, pleasure, or preference satisfaction for the greatest number.
Outcome is everything.
Outcome is what justifies the action or the rule. But there's a key distinction.
Between justification and deliberation.
Yes. Utilitarianism tells you what makes an action right. Good consequences. But it doesn't necessarily mean you have to sit and calculate the potential utility of every single choice you make all day long. That would be impossible. It's a standard for evaluation, not always a practical decision procedure.
And it gets criticized, right? This idea that a utile is a utile, all happiness units are equal.
That's a major critique. First, how do you even measure and compare happiness between people? It's notoriously difficult.
Right.
And second, the impersonality. If all that matters is the total amount of good, it might seem to justify sacrificing one person's well-being for a slightly larger gain spread across many others. It can clash with our intuition about individual rights and fairness.
Which is where someone like John Rawls comes in, trying to combine fairness and rationality.
Exactly. Rawls uses a thought experiment, the original position behind a veil of ignorance.
Where you don't know who you'll be in society, rich, poor, talented, not talented.
Right. And from that position of impartiality, Rawls argues, people would choose principles of justice that are fair to everyone. They'd want basic liberties for all, and they'd only allow inequalities if those inequalities benefited the least well-off members of society.
Trying to build a just society from a foundation of rational self-interest under conditions of fairness.
It's a powerful modern attempt to ground justice in a kind of social contract, respecting both individual autonomy and community well-being.
Okay, you covered a huge sweep of Western thought. Now let's dive into the really messy part, contemporary ethical debates, where all these ideas crash together.
And one trend is a resurgence of virtue theory, moving away from just rules, or consequences, utilitarianism.
Back to that Socratic question. What kind of person should I be?
Exactly. Focusing on character, virtues, dispositions. Like that example from Middlemarch, Dorothea agonizing over her character, not just the outcome.
But virtue theory isn't enough on its own, is it? The eliminatism problem.
Right. You can have virtues serving bad ends. The courageous Confederate officer example shows that. Courage is a virtue, but if it's serving an unjust cause, you need some external standard like rights or justice to evaluate the cause itself. Virtues need direction.
Which connects to that Huckleberry Finn example, his feelings versus in the morality of his time.
Jonathan Bennett's analysis is brilliant here. Huck feels sympathy for Jim, the runaway slave, and acts on it, even though he believes he's doing wrong according to societal rules.
So feelings can be a better guide than rules sometimes.
Bennett argues they can be. He contrasts Huck with someone like Himmler who suppressed his natural human feelings to follow a horrific ideology. Sometimes our sympathies point toward a deeper morality than the prevailing code.
Powerful stuff. Another huge element today is rights. They've evolved, haven't they? Negative versus positive rights.
Definitely. Early on, rights were mostly negative freedom from interference. Locke's life, liberty, property, protection against the state.
But now we talk about positive rights.
Yes, entitlements to things like education, healthcare. These often require the state to act, to provide resources, not just refrain from interfering.
And rights operate globally now, not just within nations.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
Universal human rights provide a moral baseline, a framework for law everywhere, regardless of the political system. And they aren't opposed to social responsibility. They actually depend on it and help foster it by ensuring everyone has a basic level of dignity and protection.
Okay, let's tackle some really hard cases. Euthanasia, big debate.
Huge. And views have shifted historically. Greeks and Romans were often okay with suicide, even infanticide in some cases. The Judeo-Christian tradition brought that strong emphasis on the sanctity of life.
Modern arguments often focus on mercy and autonomy.
Yes. Relieving unbearable suffering, respecting a person's considered wish to end their life. Places like the Netherlands have legalized it under strict conditions, voluntary request, unbearable suffering, no alternatives, consultation.
But there's that tricky philosophical distinction, killing versus letting die.
It's a classic problem. Is actively giving a lethal injection morally different from passively withdrawing life support? One view says killing starts a causal chain to death, while letting die is not intervening in one that's already started. But the moral weight of that distinction is heavily debated.
And the difference between intending death and merely foreseeing it.
Also crucial in these debates is giving high doses of painkillers intending to kill the patient or intending to relieve pain while foreseeing that death might be hastened. Some ethical systems, like the Catholic Church's doctrine of double effect, say the latter can be permissible if the primary intention is good, relieving pain. But again, many philosophers question if that distinction holds up morally.
Moving to another complex issue, abortion. What are the main lines of argument?
Well, you have consequentialist arguments, focusing on outcomes reducing suffering, promoting women's autonomy and well-being, considering the social cost for women without access.
And the counter-arguments.
Often based on the inherent moral status of the fetus, arguing abortion is intrinsically wrong. This frequently gets into the personhood debate, what characteristics grant full moral status? Is it consciousness, rationality, potential moral agency?
And some argue that birth itself is a morally significant dividing line. Why?
The argument there is often practical and rights-based. Granting full legal personhood to a fetus creates immense conflicts with a pregnant woman's bodily autonomy and fundamental rights, given the unique biological dependency. Birth marks the point of biological separation, allowing the newborn to be treated as a distinct individual without overriding the woman's established rights.
Okay, briefly on sexual ethics. Quite an evolution there, too.
Definitely. From Greek views often separating mind and body, and Christian traditions sometimes emphasizing asceticism, we've moved towards models based more on consent and mutual fulfillment.
Like the contractual model,
Yeah.
based on voluntary agreement.
Yes, based on informed consent and reciprocity. But that's also critiqued.
By feminists like Catherine McKinnon.
Right. McKinnon and others argue that social power imbalances, particularly gender inequality, mean that women's consent might not always be truly free or autonomous. Social conditioning can shape desires and make genuine informed consent difficult, potentially a sham in some contexts.
So many layers. Finally, let's zoom out even further. Ethics beyond humans, environmental ethics.
This broadens the moral circle significantly. You have different approaches. Some are animal-centered, focusing on sentient individuals. Others are life-centered or biocentric, giving moral consideration to all living things, even plants or microbes.
And then there's ecological holism.
Yes, where the focus is on entire ecosystems, species, the biosphere as a whole. Individuals matter, but primarily in relation to the health and integrity of the ecological system. Things like biodiversity, complexity, naturalness become morally valuable properties in themselves. A rainforest matters more than a cornfield, perhaps.
And what about our duties to other humans far away? Global poverty.
The argument is strong that our duties don't stop at borders. We live in an interconnected global society through trade, politics, communication. That creates a moral community.
Which leads to that provocative idea, the negative actions thesis.
Exactly. The idea that failing to act to prevent serious harm, like preventable death from poverty or disease, when we could easily do so, is morally comparable to actively causing harm.
So our inaction, our lifestyle choices, might make us complicit.
That's the uncomfortable suggestion. If our consumption patterns or our failure to support effective aid contributes to ongoing suffering, are we partially responsible? It challenges the simple distinction between doing harm and merely allowing harm to happen.
And finally, balancing our own quality of life with generosity.
The source makes a strong point here. We all legitimately want a good quality of life. But for those of us who are relatively affluent, does genuine generosity giving time or resources actually threaten that quality of life?
Probably not for most.
Likely not. In fact, the argument is that contributing to others' well-being, engaging in meaningful action, often enhances our own quality of life. It suggests that true flourishing isn't just about personal gain, but also includes connection and contribution. Greed doesn't lead to a higher quality life.
What an incredible journey through ethical thought from, the very first inklings in early societies right up to these complex global dilemmas we face today. We've seen such diversity, but also these recurring themes.
Absolutely. And hopefully, understanding these different frameworks, duty, consequences, virtue, rights, harmony, non-injury, gives you, the listener, more tools, more ways to think critically about the moral questions in your own life and in the world.
It moves us beyond just gut feelings, maybe. Gives us a richer language for ethical conversations.
Exactly. So thinking about everything we've covered, the deep roots of morality, the wisdom from different traditions, the philosophical debates, what ethical blind spots might we still have today as a society? That's something to ponder.
And perhaps, what's one small way you, personally, could engage more thoughtfully with an ethical challenge, informed by some of these ideas we've explored? Something to think about.